Good. So, I'm Sheerman. I chaired the Education Skills Study Committee for 10 years. They kept changing its name, they kept changing ministers. I will be saying something about that fact during my remarks. How long have I got to tell? I've got 20 minutes, so we better rattle through it. I had a worse experience on Monday in terms of having rattled through. Having prepared my Queen's speech on Monday, suddenly there was such pressure to speak that the time ratcheted down. 10 minutes for backbench speech is 8 minutes. When I got to the chamber, it was 6 minutes. So getting everything in 6 minutes is pretty difficult. But I think I managed it. But the irony in the House of Commons is that you make a good speech, and I think I made a really good speech. Please read it, mark it out of 10, and then email me. But the fact of the matter is, I thought I made a good speech. It got a bit of publicity, a bit of attention in the media, but far more was my intervention on the Prime Minister's Queen's speech, where I just quickly said, many people in my constituency were amazed that we've got a Queen's speech, no mention of youth unemployment, no mention of graduate unemployment, and where is the higher education bill gone? I got a lot of attention for that, and when I intervened earlier in that debate on Monday with Vince Cable and said I have great respect for the Honourable Gentleman. Vince and I chaired for my sins the preparation for the Euro Committee for about 6 years, and he was my deputy, so we are good friends. And I said, but I have great respect for him because he's actually worked for a living. He had a proper job, unlike most of the other leaders of the coalition. I didn't want to add the leaders of the opposition, but it's true too, isn't it? We're in a strange country, aren't we? Preparation for skills of leadership in politics is not evident, is it? And I want to say something about that today. So I've got some themes going, and to see if they resonate with you. I don't want to talk about everything, so I don't want to talk about HE and FE and the skills, but I'll throw a bit in. But I want to get you going today about systems. I actually think we do not have a systematic approach to educational skills in our country. I think it's fragmentary. I think it's not joined up. And the lack of joined upness is both sectoral, but it's also the daft political system that we have. We have a system where if a minister is half successful, they're ambitious to leave the department and move on. And constantly, as I sat there for 10 years as chairman of the Education and Skills Committee, I saw secretaries of state, 5 of them come and go. I saw junior ministers come and go. And I saw a kind of churn that if you had it in a school, you put the school in special measures immediately. But that was government, and that was the Department of Education. And it's still going on. And the last figure I saw yesterday, there's been a 42% cut in the personnel in the Department of Education. At the same time, we're getting the most centralised education system in the history of this country. So I'm looking at Scott's colleague. That's probably not true in Scotland, but it's certainly true in England. Yes, the department increasingly extremely powerful and the decision maker on most things educational, because as we know, there's been a steady takeaway of power and responsibility from local authorities. So it's a very changing scenario, but I think it's very difficult to have a systems-based approach. On the other hand, let us not listen to politicians when they say, and I got very irritated with Andy Burnham, when he kept saying about, in the first 2 years when he was the Shadow Education Spokesman, he said this is a highly ideological government. It's a highly... I said to him several occasions, if it's ideological, will you explain what the ideology is, and then I'd be better able to assess it. Because I see it as much more pragmatic and, something that Michael Gove thought up in the shower this morning. But that's just my own personal opinion, and today I'm not here to be political. I'm party political. I'm here to try it and give you some benefit of the experience that I have. And I do 3 jobs at the moment. I am the chair of the Skills Commission. I'm chair of the Labour Party. Stephen Twigg asked me to chair a new commission looking at school to work. I'm very busy at the moment with that, and a quick commercial. If anything I say today around those issues stimulates you and you think, I wish I could contribute to that, I am Sheerman B at parliament.uk, and when I come here, it makes it worthwhile for me if you then email me and say, yeah? Also, you know, content of the speech, rubbish, but you could improve it in this way. But also, I'd like to be in dialogue with you because my experience might be useful. So please do remember, Sheerman B at parliament.uk. So let's look at the system. I just think it's unsystematic the way that we approach educational skills. We are also, and that's partly the political process, partly elections, partly the vanities of course, when I said ministers, Chair, so do civil servants. I'm looking at a civil servant behind me. You know, just as you get to know a civil servant in the Department of Education and Children's Schools and Families, they were moved on for career development. So what on earth the continuity was in the department at times, I really rather wondered. So there are some problems about it, but then there is a big myth about educational politics, a big myth that when a political party gets in, there is an enormous heaving change because of this ideological divide. I can tell you that may seem like it right now because we're 2 years into the new government and they're doing things rather differently. Academy's programme, the way it was turned on its head, is one aspect of that. But if you look historically at the development of education policy in our country since 1945, 1944, because I want to take you back to the Butler Education Act, it is a much more a cross-party and less political than you think. Yes? Just bear in mind that when people say to me, well, comprehensive education was introduced by a Labour government, of course it wasn't. The interesting thing about the 44 Education Act was the last time we had a national government, yeah, chaired by a Conservative, Ralph Butler, but cross-party, and they came up, the Butler Education Act had that tripartite grammar, secondary modern and technical divide. And within a very short period of time of that working, we had a grassroots rejection of the 11+. And up and down the country, Conservative administrations, in Somerset, independent administration and Labour, rejected it and brought in comprehensive education because they didn't like that divide at 11. And that is the truth. It was a grassroots movement, the comprehensive movement. There was never a comprehensive education act. There were acts later on to modify that proposal. And of course, we all remember that under Margaret Thatcher's time as Secretary of State for Education, more grammar schools were abolished and became comprehensive than any other minister. So let's just get real about the history of education and politics. And you know, the person that actually had the ideas of what has influenced all today was Jim Callaghan in who remembers the history of all this? Ruskin speech, what year was it? The Ruskin speech. It was 1976 for Churchill Misery. 1976, he went to Ruskin College at Oxford and he said, we need a transformation in the education of our country. Yeah? And he said three things. He said, we need to know how children are doing. We need more testing and assessment. We also need a national curriculum, and we need a much stronger inspectorate. Does that sound familiar? It sounds familiar to me. But he had no majority, and he had no money. He was in a terrible state at that time. And he didn't do much about it. But in came the Tories in 1979, Mrs. Thatcher, Ken Baker, and they did precisely that. Yes, that was the policy. Bipartisan policy in so many ways. And actually, if you go through to the present day, probably the most radical change in some senses, because it was radical. Because when Jim Callaghan made that speech, the Times said, what is the Prime Minister doing talking about education? It's a secret garden that Prime Ministers should not enter. In other words, it's the job of the Secretary of Education and local authorities. Amazing, huh? 20 years later, a young upstart went to Ruskin College to make another speech in '96, and they said some ridiculous thing that the most important thing in our country was education, education, education. And a year later, he got a massive majority and was obsessive about education during the time he was Prime Minister, Tony Blair. Yeah? And one could say the most committed to education Prime Minister you had. Unfortunately, he had a Chancellor of the Exchequer that didn't agree with him a lot of his educational ambitions and stopped him doing quite a few of the things that he planned to do. But nevertheless, what I'm trying to show you is look back at that history and it's reasonably bipartisan. It is not strikingly ideological. There are nuances of movements. And what I'm going to suggest today, isn't it about time, actually, we got an all-party real consensus about what are the weaknesses and strengths of our educational skill system and start working on them. Let's give you one. My last inquiry in the Select Committee was on NEETs. And I looked at NEETs up and down the United Kingdom, where the Scottish and the Welsh experience was better than the English, and we went to a couple of other countries, particularly the Netherlands, to look at what they're doing. By the time I finished, I was absolutely convinced if we are ever going to have a better chance of investing in our future, it was to transform the culture of young people up to 25. Years ago, I was Roy Hanson's deputy as the Shadow Home Affairs Minister. And after spending an awful lot of time with police chiefs and prison governors and all that sort of stuff, it became very clear, all the research shows, if you keep young people out of criminality until 25, they don't become criminals. You might bump off your husband or your wife or you know what, but you don't become a proper criminal, do you? That's the truth. And so the research shows, spend your money on early years diverting kids from criminality. That's where the evidence shows it works. And of course, as I was chair of the committee, it was an open season for me because I constantly, because the government came in, Tony Blair and said, we believe in evidence-based policy. I used to haul ministers and civil servants over the coals if they couldn't tell me what the evidence was for the policy. In early years, the very best case of policy based on research, we all know that the earlier you intervene in educational terms, the better bang for the buck. The earlier, the better. By 22 months, an unstimulated child compared to a stimulated child has an enormous gap. All research shows that. By 22 months. So if you aren't in preschool, if you're not in early years, if you haven't introduced nursery education as a right, if you haven't gone in for that whole preschool revolution that we've started on, it's not complete, and children's centres and all that are under some threat at the moment, but what a good investment that has been and will be because it's based on the research. Yeah? The awful fact that so early in lives, a bright, high IQ kid from a less stimulated background is overtaken by the average kid from the stimulated background. And that is a class thing as well. It's an income thing. So, evidence-based policy, I do urge us all to believe in and to use as our watchword. I used to get professors come in front of my committee and I would say to them, what is the evidence for that statement? Because we're not professors of education in our country. You know how much classy journalists. They've got an opinion about everything. There's a very famous one that people would regularly come in and I would say, what is the evidence for that? And I would get a kind of guardian leader sort of thing, but no evidence. And I loved it when professors came in, and a couple I could tell you who came in and said, Chairman, I have not done any research in that area, I know of no research in that area, so I can't give you an answer. Wow, hallelujah, what a refreshing answer, because our sector is full of people who think they know everything. But let's have some watchwords. Evidence-based policy. And the evidence shows that up till 25, if you get a kid out of crime, they don't become criminals. I'm going to put to you today, if we can keep every young person out of worklessness until 25, they won't become workless. Yeah? The real problem, the real challenge that we all have, that we should be ashamed of, that there are a large number of people, 1 million kids out there, unemployed and doing nothing and receiving benefits to do nothing. That's got to be wrong. And when I went to Holland, when I went to see the Dutch experience, no one can get any benefit until they're 27. And they can't get benefit until 27 unless of course they're working, they don't need benefit, and if they're not working, they have to train. So everyone working and training, Holland to 27, I'd like to see what would change of culture in our country. No one is allowed to do nothing until 25. I think that will be the recipe for getting rid of the intergenerational worklessness in the communities that many of us in this country represent, that is unacceptable to me and I think to all of you. Yes? What a change that would be. And when I got the House of Commons looking at the figures, and they're not bad, the researchers in the House of Commons, it isn't a lot of money. It would cost, if I strip down figures, between 3 and 4 billion a year. 3 and 4 billion a year. Actually, if you put that down at the Olympics, bless it, is 13 billion. Yeah? The Crossrail is 15 billion. The High Speed 2 is 30 billion. And I know they're capital projects, but come on, let's get real. And what do we think the long-term investment for this country is in terms of what we would do if we scar another generation with worklessness who will never reach their individual potential and will be and never be vigorous, happy, fulfilled individuals, and cynically won't pay much tax. So come on, let's agree there are certain things that we could do in this country on a cross-party basis. Get all the parties together. Big educational commission, royal commission, and let's do something for young people. And I say that in the context is when I said to the Prime Minister, and I also in my speech on Monday pointed out that in a competitive situation, the big elephant in the room that no one can talk about. I bet someone in the room will know the joke about me and my tweet about a bacon bat. Anyone hear about my indiscretion on Twitter? Oh, good. Well, I'm going to tell you. Don't ever do. I use Twitter because local papers are closing down. Huddersfield Daily Examiner might close tomorrow because Trinity Mirror might say, they've just closed the Halifax Courier. But up and down the country, my traditional means of communicating with my constituents is going. Anyway, the readership is diminishing because people are switching into using their phones and their iPads and so on. And so I've got to communicate with my constituents. And I'm only up to 1,100 followers. Anyone who wants to follow me, be Sheerman, MP, you would get me, okay? But the terrors, I've not made any mistakes so far. As I say, I've only got 1,100 followers, but I'm getting there. But the other day, I was at Victoria Station, and I was late. I was taking a whole team with my team. I'm chair policy cadet. We have 22 young graduate workers. We were going down to the Millennium Seed Bank to for a day, team building. And some of them were a bit late. I was trying to get a cup of coffee and a bacon sandwich in the Camden food place. And the wonderful young woman who served me gave me the wrong order and then the wrong change. And I foolishly tweeted on the train, just had the worst bacon sandwich in the world, at Camden was it, why can't they employ more English people? And suddenly I was a racist xenophobe. It was years after campaigning, the anti-apartheid and everything else, that silly tweet made me a racist xenophobe. But in my mind, I had been preparing for my Queen's Speech speech, and I've been doing a lot of work on unemployment in Europe. And I think it is crazy if we can't talk about this elephant in the room, about the competition that an ordinary kid in this country, an average kid in this country has, whatever the skills they have, against where they are in the market today. And I'm talking about young Pakistanis and young black kids and young working class white kids. There are 25 million unemployed people in Europe today, 25 million, who could come here and work. They've got every right to come here and work. A more frightening statistic, there's 6.9 million unemployed graduates in Europe. 6.9 million highly skilled people. Many of them with English, of course. And where would you be heading if you were in Athens today, or in many places in Portugal? And have you seen the Polish unemployment figures? 25% unemployment, 50% youth unemployment, and 28% graduate unemployment. So I just think, first lesson, I think, let's have a new systems approach. Secondly, let's have evidence-based policy. Third, let's talk about the difficult things as well as the easy things. And one of the difficult things is actually taking a new look at what's the relevant skills that our young people have, given the competition they have. In Lewisham today, there are 35 applications for any job that's offered for a young person. Yeah? That's serious. And even why I did my speech the other day say, look, when I come down from Yorkshire and my Yorkshire constituents come to London, they think it's another country. Yeah? Because we've been in recession in the regions of this country for 4 years. And if you take London and the South East figures out, with all this investment and the Olympics and the Shard and all that stuff, and the Crossrail, all that away from the national statistics, the rest of the country has been in recession. So let's also face the reality of that fact. But that doesn't mean to say, in Lewisham, if you're a young person leaving school at 16 and 17 and 18, which many kids still do, don't forget that, please, yeah, more than half of our young people do not go on to university, do higher education. And the fact is, the competition they're facing for jobs, even what we call quite modest jobs, they are now competing as ordinary young people with perhaps, perhaps GCSE record or some A levels. They are competing with graduates from all over Europe. That's the truth of the matter, and I just want us to bear in mind that that is the truth. The other thing I want to tell you is that I get to that stage of my life where I chair lots of things, but I'm chairing a management group of MPs as well. And I work very closely with the Chartered Institute of Management. We were talking about that earlier. And we came out with a survey which I helped launch with the Minister for Higher Education and Skills only a month ago. We came up with this piece of research done by I think it was Cranfield, but on the level of management skills in Britain today. And according to this very serious piece of research, again, evidence-based research, 43% of our management is bloody awful. It is. I mean management everywhere, in schools, in colleges, in hospitals, in private business. We are not good as managers in many of the places in which we operate. And when I go to a school, and you go to a school or a college, you soon pick up when it's badly managed. And I think management is really at the heart of many of the problems that we face in our sector and in other sectors too. Because what the research showed is that management is seen as a sort of thing you can pick up. Okay, I trained as a teacher. Okay, I trained as a college leader. But did I really get the management experience I need for running a complex organisation? And I have to tell you, a university is look at the size of the university. My Huddersfield University, very successful, booming university. It's the biggest employer in Huddersfield. Amazing success stories. We've gone pushing up the rankings. In the top 10 for employability, all those things. What a management task it is. And other people running it, I actually think we've got an all-round team and a good vice-chancellor. But I go down the road to, anybody from Huddersfield here? I go down the road to other schools and colleges where I suspect the management training isn't quite as good. But the management task means taking management seriously and not thinking you can pick it up or do it on a weekend or even doing it a couple of conferences like this. Training in management is a serious business, and if you're going to do it at Cranfield. Do it at a high quality place, but do it as a serious challenge and as a serious piece of education. My advice to any young person who wants to put themselves in focus, in the right management, in the right position, in terms of skills, whatever other skills they've got, add management to it. So there someone waving the back? Are you waving at me?
I did not mean to interrupt.
Okay, have we got time for questions?
Yes.
A few minutes for questions.
Go.
If anybody would like to ask a question, because there are 4 key themes there, which are very powerful. One about leading a system which is cross-party and consistent. One which is about evidence-based policy, a proposal for young people and a real message about getting real and tackling honest problems rather than pretending that they don't exist or playing with statistics, really.
Okay, come on, lots of questions. Lady there first.
Thank you. Emily Oliver, British Red Cross. Thank you. I really wanted to pick up your point about the policies that surround education, and I just wanted to use an example of some of the work we've been doing. The British Red Cross runs first aid education for young offenders, and the results of those courses show that there's fantastic attitude change, behavioural change, real stimulation is gained by those young offenders. But after the course, try getting them into volunteering, shadowing, work experience and so on. And the red tape becomes almost insurmountable. So I suppose my point is really that it's not just education, which obviously we can provide here in this instance, which is good, but it's the policy that surrounds that really needs to be looked at as well.
Thank you for that. I've signed up as a supporter of the campaign to get it on the curriculum, as you know. I half agree, perhaps I 70% agree. The only thing that I wish you hadn't said red tape. Honestly, wish, I go to more schools than any other member of Parliament, and I keep that strike record up. And I go to a school, and I walk through the door, and if their head says, well, we could do better, but they sometimes say, look at the kids, look where they live. Yeah? And then, I can't stand it. And then they say, oh no, if only I could get rid of the red tape, I could run this school properly. But all this paperwork and so on. And I go into school, identical kind of surroundings and population, up the road, and usually a woman, I have to say, sorry, it was sexist, comes through the head, a fantastic head says, oh, that red tape, that paperwork, we take no notice of that, we get on with a job. And doing, running, delivering high quality education for our kids. So I'm just a bit nervous that it's become a cliche that everyone uses when we did our inquiry into false allegations against teachers and lecturers. Damn good piece of work which actually is percolating through. Thank God. But we did find it was cumbersome. People didn't understand it. A lot of the problems for false allegations against teachers and lecturers were because of the people that were running the place. It was so unusual to have one. They didn't understand the system. I don't think that was red tape, that was slightly different. And I think your case is slightly different. So can we agree not to use that particular expression? The lady right at the back who waved in the first instance, so did she get a chance? Right at the back?
There's no question.
She's the lady here.
Just give us your name and where you're from.
I will do.
Hello Barry, Sue Davies, head teacher at Harlowfield School and College. I'm quite passionate about developing the opportunities for young adults with learning disabilities, adults with learning disabilities. And with the imminent demise of REMPLO and no clear alternative provision, and also really little opportunities at HE for that cohort of people. What's your thinking about a way forward for this group of young adults? And thinking about creating meaningful opportunities.
Which adults?
Adults with learning disabilities.
Yeah. Well, you get another confession. I'm chairman of Achievability, which is a charity where we try to help young people who have barriers to learning, as I think we call it now, don't we? It is a very real problem. One of the inquiries, I live by inquiries I've done, one of the inquiries I did was into special educational needs. And sometimes you have a guilt about something that we do. A great tragedy in our country. That special educational needs, as we saw, were not bad actually. It wasn't wonderful and it wasn't awful. It was average up to 16. In some places it was wonderful. And between those warring factions of total inclusion and the people that would die on the barricades to keep their special school open, we actually suggested that there was a kind of a compromise, because special educational needs provision should be close to where all the other kids are being, not in some Victorian old school miles from anywhere. So kids should be close together for shared facilities, and we came out, I think, with a good report. The disaster is post-16. The disaster is post-16. And the real challenge is to get that right. And post-18, for serious special educational needs still is a national disgrace. And I think you're absolutely right, something that we have to concentrate money and resources on. Absolutely.
Final question.
Orange question over here. Ish?
Hello, my name is Philippa Newis and I work at the policy team for a charity called Gingerbread, with a national charity for single parent families. And actually I have a point about that wider policy context, particularly with welfare benefits. And we have a very aggressive work-first approach within the benefits system, getting people into work. Now, you've spoken about young people as a disadvantaged group, and as our single parents quite a disadvantaged group, with over 40% on out-of-work benefits. Now, the average age of a single parent is 36.
Yeah.
But often they need those additional skills and further education to get themselves into decent paid work with a chance to progress. But we're stuck with this work-first approach that is disabling single parents to be able to get them into work that can help them work themselves with their children and themselves out of poverty. So any thoughts on that would be most welcome.
Well, nice to have someone from Gingerbread here, and great charity. But can I just say that I think you're absolutely right, but what I said about how we change the culture up until 25, if we could do that, I think we make a very big difference between what the culture is going to be like post-25, but that's a long-term solution. But in terms of single parents, I believe that the work-first basis is not the right one. It's got to be work with training, because there are so many of the single parents that I talk about, single parents organisation. The problem is getting the skills to get a decent job. You know, I mean, I could have gone on this morning about. I'm going to finish on this. Please, the chair is very hard on me because I wanted to come to my last and final point. It was the fifth point. Stop living mythically. People in this country love to live mythically. Yeah, this is tied with evidence-based research. But you know, most people, 1% of people in this country work in agriculture, slightly less than 1%. Yeah, 10% of people in this country, slightly less, work in manufacturing industry. 10%. Yeah, even in my constituency, the manufacturing constituency is about 11.5%, but the average is 10%, and 30% work in education and in health and in council services. What people, I hate the term public services, but they are services of that kind. And 60% of people work in private services. Yeah? And at the bottom end of that is tough. It's really tough. And even if you look at the real people who do it, early years, minimum wage and minimum wage plus in this country, not like Denmark, highly trained professionals, only a serious salary, seriously trained for the job. I did a sponsored walk recently that Bupa sponsored for some charity, and they said, well, come and see our care home in your constituency. I went, 43 people in an old Victorian millionaire's house being looked after very, very well. When I talked to the staff, 12-hour shifts, minimum wage, and they're only allowed £1 to be spent on their meals, so they get a baked potato every day. Yeah? So the bottom end of the private service world, you will not, I want for people in this country to live the good life. You cannot live the good life on minimum wage. And we've got to upskill people, give them real skills that get them up to the next level. Private services, if you're a designer, if you're a banker, and all that stuff, there are some really good, well-paid jobs. But they aren't, everybody can't access them. And many of the realities of our society at the moment is there are a large number of people on minimum wage doing fantastic jobs and very often unskilled. So that is a barrier from having that full life. And I think we're in a position still, and in a strange way, I think loans for FE is emphasised this rather than helped the challenge. You know, lifelong learning has become a cliche that many governments mouth, but it hasn't become a reality yet. And people like you are going to make sure that you lobby us to make sure it's delivered. Thank you for being patient.
Thank you very much.
Sheerman@parliament.uk. Have a good argument with you, please. And be rude to me on Twitter. Thank you.